Hello and welcome to episode 335 of the Stacey West podcast. The number keeps going up and up and up, which you'd expect. It's not going to go backwards. My name's Gary. I am one of your hosts, and I am joined today by our international imp in what I hope is a slightly warmer climate of Gibraltar, and it's Charlie Beeston. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, hot, actually. A lot warmer than I think Lincoln was, and a lot drier than what Lincoln seemed to be yesterday, considering some of the messages and such that I was seeing pre-match. But no, I'm really good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, actually. I've had a little bit of a moan today because I bought a steering wheel cover for my van. So regular listeners will know that I bought a VW camper van. And this steering wheel cover, I just thought it would be like, put it on, bit of Velcro, Bob's your uncle. Oh no, you've got to sew it in. It may surprise people to find out that I'm not great at needlework. I lack the patience, and I'm not good at doing fiddly things with my fingers, much to the disappointment of many girls over the years. So I did go out and try and do that. I lost my temper very quickly and came back in. So Fee's going to pick up on that for me. Yeah. And you were right. It was very wet yesterday. We got into Gwyn's at about 12:15 and literally just stayed there. So there's no point going anywhere else because we're just going to get absolutely soaked.
Kind of sounds like the perfect pre-match routine, doesn't it?
Yeah, you'd think so. Yeah, you would. It was all right, actually. Dad was there. Chris came in as well. Me and Chris had a lovely discussion about who Lincoln City's leading scorer is, because I said Bailey Cadamarteri is our leading scorer because he scored 5 goals, which is more than anybody else. But Chris argued that it was actually Ben House because he'd scored 4 goals, all of which were in the league. So he said we were both right, which wasn't right. I was right. So,
depends on what stipulation you place on it, of course.
Well, I said Lincoln City's leading scorer is Bailey Cadamarteri. I mean, I don't know how many ways you can interpret that. You're a lawyer.
Seeing as you didn't specify league, Chris is wrong.
We all know he is.
Honestly, what is it with you two recently? It feels like disagreements are coming more and more frequently. Have you guys had a bit of a falling out or something?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, I think it's familiarity, isn't it? Eventually familiarity. You feel a little bit more confident with people. I think it's why I could fall out with Ben quite easily, because 250 episodes in, it was easy to pick him up on things. And it's really hard now when I'm with Ben on the show. I can't help but pull him up on little things. And I quite like the fact Steve Race says that's married life, basically, for you. The longer you're with somebody, the more you feel like picking them up on things. So I'm not going to tell Fee that. So yeah, so we're going to have to talk about football, I suppose, at some point. And do you know what? People have kind of tuned into that, and people will be listening at home wanting for some football talk. I could talk about running, but I'm sure that's not going to go down as well.
Yeah, let's talk about running.
I could do that first of all. No, we won't. We'll talk about football. We'll talk about running later on, because obviously it's my first show since the London Marathon announcement, so I'll pick up on that a little bit. But yeah, yesterday, Wycombe at home. It was one of those games where I thought it was going to be a really just horrible game of football. Attritional, bad weather, misplaced passes, swirling wind. And actually, from my point of view, and this is purely only opinion, I thought it was a great game of football. I thought it was a proper thriller. Obviously, we had the lead. I thought we might have pulled it back to 3-3 late on the way we were going. But at kickoff, I don't think I fancied it. We were in Gwyn's, and literally Bob in Gwyn said, if I gave you a 0-0 now, would you take it? And I'm like, yeah, I'd go home and light the fire, and that would be it, done and dusted.
Yeah, to be honest, I was very much the same as you, expecting the worst in terms of a game of football, not even in terms of performance from our side or result or anything like that, just the worst in terms of the game of football. And obviously you put out a tweet, didn't you? Was it yesterday morning or late Friday afternoon, sort of putting the records of the two sides and just saying it screamed it was going to be a 0-0 draw. Obviously, luckily, that wasn't what we got. And we did get a really good game of football. And it kind of had a little bit of everything. It had some really nice free-flowing football at times. It had some really nice goals, one, a great longer range strike from Tendai. We had some nice passing play, maybe a little bit more from Wycombe in terms of their goal to be able to create that from their second goal that basically started in their own half and being able to pass it through. And then it had, at the end of the game, the final 5-6 minutes where they're looking at the watches praying that the time's going to go quickly, which, sometimes I think a few people were maybe thinking that the referee definitely could have gave us a little bit more time at the end. And Lincoln fans trying to G on the players to have one last opportunity. It did just seem like it was one of those, weirdly, it felt like a Christmas period game. Like one of those games between Christmas and New Year that's got quite a bit to it. A little bit like maybe Ipswich a few years back, where it just seemed like everything was coming up for this one match, and now we'll have a couple of 1-1 draws after this to kind of settle ourselves again.
Well, Charlie's just covered the whole game, so that was episode 335 of the Stacey West podcast.
Did say I didn't want to talk football, so I got it out of the way quickly.
So let's go all the way back to the start. At the minute, there is a sense of when the team comes out, you are looking for who's missing. Freddie Draper yesterday, Rico Hackett yesterday. I think Rico almost certainly would have started. Potentially Fred, maybe that kind of the physical element was a little bit lacking up top. But Rico had been away with St. Lucian. He's picked up a knock. We had a couple on yellow cards, which we know is going to affect us for Wrexham going forward. But I think probably the biggest surprise in the selection was Dylan Duffy coming back in for a start, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I'll be honest, I've said it for a while since he came in. I really like Dylan Duffy. I think there's something that he can bring to this team. At the moment, I feel like it's a little bit of untapped potential so far. And there's definitely more from him that we need to see to be able to keep that belief in week out. But I like to see when he gets a start, one of the young guys coming over from Ireland, maybe not quite having that same impact as maybe a Jack Moylan has done since he came in, but I feel like he could have a similar impact a little bit further on down the line. So I always like to see him get in the minutes that I think he's shown that he deserves at least some up to this point.
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise for me, actually, over Dom Jeffries. I really like Dom Jeffries at left wing back. We were talking in the pub beforehand about how quickly he's settled. He's up there in terms of assists as well. So I was actually surprised that we went with Duffy. I did wonder perhaps if Jeffries had got a knock. I mean, obviously we're playing quite a lot of games at the moment. But anyway, the game started really brightly for both teams. We get our noses in front nice and early, but we were playing really well, and it was no less than we deserved. It was a cracking goal. Ethan Arahan at the heart of it. I know it was a Ben House cross. I know it was a Tendai finish, and Tendai had a great game as well. But for me, Ethan Arahan coming back into the side really did help us. And there was, I don't know if Gav is listening, Gav Hughes, but he was sat around me and basically saying, well, he's not really been back at his best, has he? He's only had 45 minutes against Exeter where he changed the game. And now he's basically what they call a second assist. And that will horrify the likes of Jack Mulhall and Andy Pearson listening. His second assist and third assist, it's all a load of rubbish. But for me, you've got Ethan's the player that breaks up the play. He's the one that picks it up in front of the 18-yard area. And for me, he was instrumental in what was a really good team goal.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the thing is with Ethan is if you just look at those basic underlying stats of goals and assists and things like that, he's never exactly going to be at the highest of anywhere in terms of Lincoln City or the league or whatever. But if you use the eye test, just to try and bring those guys back in favour with us, then you just know exactly how good he is. And he does get a lot of those second assists. Okay, yeah, maybe not a term that likes to be thrown around too much, but he's always instrumental whenever we do create an attack. And a lot of the time it starts with him, or he's integral in some parts of it. For example, we have had a lot of goals, especially the back end of last season. We scored a lot of goals from him recycling the ball from set pieces. That was always something that he was great at. And he may not get the assists for that, but he was always the one that was willing to knock the ball straight back into the area, and it was always a good ball. And those are the sorts of things that he can do from midfield, which is obviously why he was even such a big miss for 3, 4, 5 games, however long exactly it was that he wasn't in the squad for. So it's great to now have him back, and he will be back up at his best very soon because it's Ethan Arahan. There's kind of no doubting that it's any different. But no, it was a really nice goal as well. Ben House creating and Tendai. I rave about Tendai every week. I don't want to just sound like a broken record, but he's good. He's really good. I really like Tendai doing it. So I like to see him getting the goals and such to be able to top off good performances overall throughout the season.
There was a little sigh there that was reminiscent of Ben and Harry Toffolo. You went Tendai. Oh. It's like, all right, Charlie, all right.
Sorry, I'm getting a little bit excited. All right.
So Tendai is so good that their leveler came from what was him misjudging the ball, basically. So we'll we'll pick up on that. No, I'm not criticising Tendai because he's all over the place. He's having to play different positions at times. He's popped up with 2 goals yesterday, one of which we'll come to. But Wycombe, we'll talk a little bit about them. They're a good side, and they were contributing to that thrilling game. It felt a little bit like the Birmingham game where when they went forward, you think they might be able to score. I wonder if that's more a question of us defensively than anything. Against Birmingham and Wycombe, we've now conceded 6 goals at home, and these aren't teams that are particularly free scoring. I mean, we know Richard Kone is able to score goals on a regular basis, but it was pretty much gifted to him. I mean, it's a ball lofted to the back post, nodded in after Tendai's just misjudged the trajectory. Was that disappointing at the time? I must admit, 5 Stara Praman's in. I wasn't looking to apportion blame, and I think anybody looking back on these 3 goals from yesterday, probably that's the one that they'll go, we should have done better with that.
Yeah, we should. I wasn't blaming anybody at the time. I was annoyed and angered, but that was just because Lincoln City conceded a goal more than anything else. And yeah, okay, I get it. Wycombe are top of the league, but I don't really think I wasn't anyway going into this game with the same kind of feeling as I was doing going into the Birmingham game. Yeah, all right. Even though they are higher in the league than what Birmingham are, there's kind of this different level of expectation I found between a Wycombe and between a Birmingham, obviously. So I was annoyed when we conceded. No matter how good of a run that they've been on, you still want to think anyway that Lincoln at Sincilbank on a cold, wet, rainy Saturday afternoon are going to have a great chance against literally anybody in the division, even if they are top of the league. But yeah, defensively probably a little bit poor, and I think that's maybe becoming a little bit of a theme that we need to try and sort of stamp out. There have been a few instances, a few games where we kind of look at it and you think, okay, even though they are great moves or even just nice moves by the opposition, they're the sorts of moves that last season they would get, but then wouldn't really get the shot off on target, or it would maybe be saved or whatever. And I just feel like we've slightly regressed in that sense. But then also it's the start of a new season still, even if we are however many games in we are. I always just lose count at this time of year. But even though we are only a few months into the season, you can still kind of use that as a little bit of an excuse.
16 games in, 1 clean sheet at home this season, if you don't count Man City kids. And that's against Wigan, who don't score very many goals anyway. So, you always expect that we're going to concede. It was a decent finish from Kone, but it was a little bit of a gift. And then there was a real sucker punch, because I actually felt probably on the balance of play in the first half, we were, say, equal. I mean, they were a good side. I thought on the balance of chances, probably 1-1 would have been a fair result. And then they've got what was a really, really good goal. I mean, up until that goal, our XG was 0.35 and their XG was 0.4. So literally it was neck and neck. But it was just, again, it's the moment of class. You picked out that Tendai was done on the flank. I hadn't noticed that. I think it was really good play from out wide. I think it was.
It was.
Dan Harvey, wasn't it, who was at MK Dons? Lovely ball. Probably should be doing better in the middle to touch it. I mean, I'm going to try and pronounce his name. Dimna. Fred. We'll call him Fred.
Yeah.
Fred, with 8 Premier League appearances for Luton last season, by the way. Swept in and finished nicely. And the most frustrating thing is that the XG for those 2 goals was 0.61, and their XG overall for the first half was 0.76. So literally, it's 2 chances, 2 goals. People are comparing our forwards to their forwards, and as I always say, or as I've said recently, comparison is the thief of joy. But it was just clinical. It's just timing, quick, clinical finishing.
Yeah, it was. It actually reminded me a lot of our goal against. I think it was away at Peterborough. Very kind of similar area. Yeah. We were able to, we had a lot of passes beforehand, same as what they did. We moved the ball up through the thirds. It was out wide on the left. It was a low cross into the middle, and it was a goal. And it was kind of a carbon copy. And at that point, I was saying in the game against Peterborough that this was a fantastic goal. This was one of the better goals that I've seen Lincoln City score. And it kind of just was a perfect sort of accelerant for what we could hopefully do for the rest of the season. So I can't exactly come on here and say anything different about Wycombe scoring basically a very similar goal, potentially even a better goal than what that was in that case. So that, to be honest, I can't exactly blame any Lincoln City player exactly on what happened there. They'll go back over it. They'll analyse the videos. They'll say, look, could we have done better in all different phases of that situation? But at the end of the day, actually just fair play Wycombe. And you sort of got to sit back and say that. And they are top of the league for a reason. They are ahead of Birmingham by a good few points now for a reason. And I don't really think that can be overlooked, even though going into the game, as I was saying, I kind of had that maybe a little bit of a different expectation playing against Wycombe than maybe I did do against Birmingham. Actually, it just showed me yesterday exactly why they're top of the league.
Yeah, it did. It was a good goal. It was deflating because I don't think that we deserved it on the balance of play, but they created a chance and scored it, and we didn't score any chances that we created other than the Tendai one. And unfortunately, you do the eye test, you strip it right back. That's football, and whether we deserve to be 1-1 or not at half time, we weren't. But what I did have over the half time period was an absolute belief that we could get ourselves back into the game. Because I think we were playing particularly well against a good side. And we've done it, by the way, against Stockport. They're a really good side, Stockport. We beat them recently. We obviously lost to Birmingham, lost to Barnsley. So it's just really frustrating. But came out in the second half, and I thought we began absolutely on fire, picking up on the two chances. The first one, and you'll love talking about it because obviously he's a friend of yours. The Alex Mitchell Mark II, we'll call him. It's heartbreaking, wasn't it? Because he's done everything right, young Dylan, and he's just clipped the bar.
Yeah, it's so difficult when you've got situations like that because you sit there and you know that we have got such a great chance going into the second half. And then when we've got opportunities like that and they're just close but no cigar and just a smidge away, and then you start feeling even more deflated because even though it's close and you're getting a great feeling behind you, you then start thinking, is this going to be another day where it just doesn't fall for us? And don't get me wrong, we haven't had that many of those under Marcus Cavallo, especially not since January. But when they do, if anything, they just hurt more because of it. So I was starting to feel like that was the way that the game was going to go yesterday for that exact reason.
Yeah, their keeper's pulled off a good save from Ben House. There's lots of talk in the chat at the minute. Flossie Tops, which is a great name. Wycombe were probably more clinical than Birmingham. They're just about the same. But the thing is, with Birmingham, you can point at players coming out of the Bundesliga and out of the Eredivisie and go, they've spent the money on it. But the clinical Wycombe players are Richard Kone, who was at Newnham. Okay, yeah, you've got Fred, who come from Luton, but Josh Lowe, who's been around these divisions for a while. It was frustrating, but bear in mind we have scored 2 goals at home, and we'll move on to that in a second. So in terms of being clinical, it wasn't like we missed a huge amount of chances. I mean, their keepers pulled off 2 good saves in the second half, one from Ben House and one from Tendai in a little while. I just felt up for those first 15, 20 minutes of the second half, we looked likely to score. And, it was a keeper save. It was the crossbar. It's not like shots flying high, wide and handsome and all that sort of thing. And that's encouraging. I couldn't see that at the time because I hate losing. And I find it harder to take losing to a team that are better than us than I do from a team that are rubbish that, when we're poor. I find it easy to accept us being poor. And we weren't poor. It was actually one of the better home performances, both, kind of going forward and in the midfield that we've had. I thought actually we didn't control the midfield, but I thought we had some really good possession. And it just raises an interesting question before we come on to the final flurry of goals. And Steve Banks has raised it as well. Does anyone else think the way that the Imps played on Saturday was more like we did in the second half of last season? Is it the Cohen influence? I mean, I'll answer first of all. I can see why people think that. But if you go back to the Stockport game, for instance, we actually played a lot like that, a lot like ball on the floor and into the channels and stuff like that as well. And I also think when you're playing into the wind, particularly when Wycombe were playing into the wind in the second half, it was harder for them to get out. So we were able to then try and pin them in and kind of keep them in their 18-yard area. for those first kind of 15, 20 minutes of the half.
Yeah, 100%. And thing is, that question, because Chris Cohen is going to have an influence on the rest of this season. Of course he will do. No matter who the assistant or one of the assistant managers is, they're obviously going to have an influence, hopefully positive. And, we've seen what Chris Cohen can already do. And I don't even think it's just about obviously him as a person, but it's about kind of getting the second half of last season's band back together. If you think just the big three of Max Kubala, Tom Shaw and Chris Cohen, and then obviously you've got the rest of the coaching staff on top of that as well, it's going to have hopefully anyway, a positive impact on the club. But we did play great yesterday, but it's not like that's the first or only time this season that's happened. Yeah, all right. A lot of people have very much been saying that performances haven't been quite as good as what they were the second half of last season, but that's not every game. You picked out the Stockport game there. Perfect example of a game where we played really well, managed to get the result. It was maybe a bit of a tighter result than what maybe we could have done, but also Stockport are an outstanding side this season as well, even though they got battered 5-0 by Wycombe. So, if anything, it kind of just shows again just how good Wycombe are, which isn't something I want to be repeating on the podcast.
No, and we're bound to. Now, Seb Stockbridge, I've always said that he loves a penalty. I predicted that there would be a penalty in the game. I actually didn't think he had a bad game. There was a little bit of time wasting. Harry Jackson says how their keeper didn't get booked for time wasting. I don't know. But I think it's a penalty. It's a penalty. Do you know what I mean? It's a foul. Yeah, I think he's clipped. Was it Fred's heels as he's gone through? It's Dylan Duffy. It's clumsy. It is what it is. And at the time, I was like, "That's not a penalty. That's a weak penalty." And literally everyone around me is going, "Shut up. It's a penalty. It's obvious. It's a clear penalty. It's not a bloody penalty. I'd love to see it again." And I saw it again and thought, "Well, I wish I hadn't seen that again." No, I'd have rather had blind ignorance.
Lucky. I guess I'm lucky in that sense. But I'm always the same, especially if I've had 5 or 6 pints beforehand as well. Just like you obviously were saying that you did yesterday, I would always be the exact same because you, as rose tinted as the rose tinted glasses can get. But it's a penalty. It was a penalty. I said before we start recording, I didn't see the penalty live. I had popped out by that point to go and watch a game of football and had to rewatch the last half an hour this morning before sort of coming on here. And, when you see that we've conceded a penalty to go 3-1 down, even though I wasn't watching, my immediate reaction was, "Oh, that better have been that better have actually been a penalty, or else I'm not going to be happy," sort of thing. Then watching that this morning, it's like, there is absolutely no way that I can complain about what has happened there. And for the record, I went out to go and watch a team get battered 7-0 yesterday. So trust me, I wish I was in Wycombe, even though we did lose.
Now, George Wickens has had quite a bit of criticism over the last couple of weeks. He hasn't been saving an awful lot of the shots on target, and I think it's probably a little bit harsh. The goalkeeper is a tough and it's a lonely position, and you only get called into action to do something every so often. And there's been one or two he might have done better with. He made a decent save in the first half. Do you think the penalty save will give him confidence? Like, it's not a great penalty; it's straight down the middle, but he's still got to get a leg to it, kind of thing. Do you think that will give him a little bit of confidence going forward?
I hope so. I don't know. It's difficult, isn't it, with a goal, like you say, with the goalkeeper, and you never quite know where they're going to kind of go from any particular point. They're always kind of the hardest to predict going forward. But also, they are definitely the position where fans will get on their back quickest. So it's, and especially considering Wickens obviously falls into this, but we've got a string of having young goalkeepers over the last however many years. And when fans then get on their backs, if they're maybe young, a little bit naive and experienced, and then can't kind of shake that off too easily, it's only going to make the situation worse. So, hopefully he can kind of use this, build upon it, and show over the next few months, going past January and such, that he's still the man to be our number one.
Yeah, it really felt that penalty as well could have been a turning point. Because you get a cheer as much as a goal, and I'm like, we can go and we can do this now, and we can bloody win it. We can bloody get a point. You kind of get that, and then they take their corner, and it kind of just dissipates a little bit, and then the third goal kills it off, and it's a good goal again. Probably from a defensive point of view, you don't like the fact that there's a man got loose to nod in from the edge of the 6-yard area or whatever, but yeah, people talking about being clinical. It was just a good ball to the back post. And it wasn't actually dissimilar to the one that Ben House had saved by their keeper at the beginning of the first half, a kind of lofted ball over the top. But he's just in a better position than centrally to put the ball in. And, I didn't actually think 3-1 killed the game off. That's the worst thing. I didn't, even at 3-1, I thought if we can get one back, we can get back into this. So what was your perception of their goal again? Was it another blameless kind of, well done kind of goal?
Yeah, to be honest, it's always difficult when it is those situations because to be honest, you kind of want to find somebody to blame. Not even to come out in public and just start bashing on one player as a scapegoat, but you kind of want to know that there was somebody at fault so that you can blame it rather than just blaming blind luck or the system or anything like that. But there really wasn't somebody that you could just put the one finger on and say, look, this is your fault. Step it up sort of thing, which did obviously make it more difficult. I'm kind of with you at 3-1, we were always in with a chance to be able to at least score one again. And obviously you would like for it to have been two, potentially just a little bit too little too late in terms of that. And obviously with the time wasting and such that was happening towards the end of the game as well, I can understand the frustration with that part of it as well. But I'm with you. I don't really think we're clearly, a team that can go ahead and score multiple goals in a game. But also there's a point where we shouldn't have to score 3 to get something out of a game at home.
The last 2 we've only scored 2 and got something out of a game at home. So I think it depends who we're playing. I don't, They were particularly clinical. They've got the goal, and literally straight after that, we've gone up. Ben House crossed for Tendai. Another good save by their keeper. Actually, at the time, I didn't realise what a good save it was. It was only watching it back as part of the research this morning. You go, wow, that was a decent save. Tendai's had another opportunity on goal. If he scores that 74 minutes. And we've got 16 minutes plus injury time, which was 6-7 minutes. You've got another 22 minutes to play. I genuinely think we could have turned the game around. I genuinely think we could have scored again and made it 3-3 if that chance from Tendai goes in. And it's ifs and buts. But what I liked was there was never a head drop. You're 3-1 down at home against the team at the top of the league, and we were still going for it. And I respect that in terms of an approach. It's something that you absolutely want to see as a supporter. I would rather us lose games having a go than kind of whimper and just go, oh, we don't want to concede anymore. And they were good on the break. They've got good players. There's no doubt about that at all. I think Gareth McCleary set up their last goal. I think he's about 49 or something like that, or 106. I think he used to play football when it was in black and white, and he's still a top player. So they've got quality all over the field. So Tendai doesn't miss the chance. That chance is saved. The subs came on. I thought Eric Ring did well. And then JJ McKiernan, with what I think was his first touch, takes the corner that leads to probably the goal of the game.
Yeah. One of the goals of the game. I'd like to call it the goal of the game, but I'm not sure.
Which one was the goal of the game for you?
For me, the Wycombe second.
Okay.
Yeah, I much prefer a pass.
I need to take a positive from the game. So we scored the best goal. That's what I'm saying. But go on, Charlie. So you don't agree?
No, but I just thought it was pretty awful. No, lovely goal, obviously, and obvious. It shows what Tendai can do, which is always really positive. No, look, obviously really impressive. And it showed the character again. You were just saying there, we're not the sort of team that are just willing to give up late on in games. And it's something we spoke about when we were last on the podcast. Me and you, we were talking about one of the things that Marcus Kubala has brought in since he came in, and that was this willingness to never give up and to be able to score late goals and still be in with a chance no matter what the scoreline is up until that point. And that, again, was something that we managed to see yesterday, and it was exhibited through a lovely second best of the game finish. It's just about, obviously, at that point, it was great. This is nice, but this isn't enough. Let's go. So we didn't really get to appreciate it in the moment just how good it was, because your mind then immediately flicks to, we need another. Yeah. It's only back now when you look back at it that you can sort of think, actually, that was a really nice, tidy finish. And if that was the winner, we'd be talking about that for months to come. But because it was, a consolation in the end to make it only 3-2, it's probably going to be one of those that's potentially forgotten about within the next couple of weeks.
Really frustrating probably was the added time in that it was 5 minutes we played 6, but they made a substitution in that time. They had a player wandering off the field. There were 2 goals in the second half. There were substitutions. 5 minutes didn't seem a lot, but to be fair, it could have been 8 or 9 minutes. I think Wycombe would have managed that. And we talked about time wasting, where Gareth Ainsworth to Wycombe a few years ago, where they needed a point at Sincilbank and it was 0-0 and they were time wasting on 30 minutes. That was blatant. I actually thought that I didn't think it was as blatant, to be honest, this time. I thought it was a little bit more managed. I thought it was clever. I've been critical of Wycombe in the past for the style of play. They waste time, they kill the game, they do this, they do that. I didn't see their manager taking the ball into the dugout to break up play or anything silly like that. So ultimately, I keep saying it, but the right team won. In the second half, their XG was 1.96. Take the penalty off that, it was still 1.2, and ours was 0.91. I mean, it was close, but they were just better in what they did than we were. And sadly, once again, we've been beaten by a better side, and that's why we're not top 2. That's why we're aiming top 10.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great teams in this division. We knew that coming into the season. Okay, we may not have predicted Wycombe to be one of the ones in the top 2 at this stage of the campaign, but we had all quite happily sat there and predicted an 8th, 9th place finish for Lincoln with a potential push for the playoffs as our kind of big hope. So we're going to have games where we are beaten by better teams because there are a lot of them in the division. No matter how good we are, there's plenty that are going to be able to take something from us on their day. So it can't really be too dismayed. And I agree, can blame the time wasting as much as we want as fans. And we do. We'll have got frustrated in the moment, things like that. But at the same time, it was managed quite well, and kind of can't really have too much of a go at them, even though we will probably try. It's just, I think what frustrates me the most is start of last season, we're being told that referees are bringing in these new rules with time management where everything's going to get added on a lot more and they're going to be clocking it more. And we lost points, for example, away at Northampton because they made sure to play an extra couple of minutes, which, for the record, Bristol Rovers, yeah. But for the record, with the Northampton one, they were right to add that extra 2 minutes on because the players had been off the pitch and there had been substitutions and such that had gone into the stoppage time. So they were right to do it then. But then, you can kind of argue, well, they need to be keeping that consistent. But referees and consistency, we can sit here and talk about that for years to come because it's always going to be the same thing, isn't it? At the end of the day, they're all humans and there's only so much you can have them treated as robots. But I'm not blaming the referee in any way yesterday. I don't think he had too much of a bad game at all. There's always going to be a couple of little incidents that you disagree with as fans, of course, but I don't really think he shone himself in too much of a negative light.
No, there was a couple of fouls I thought shouldn't have gone the way that they did. And there was a booking that will cost us this weekend because I think Ben House's booking, I'd have to look back. There was one of the bookings that it was like, it's not a yellow card, is it? But that's the issue. And now we're without O'Connor again, so we're hoping Jacko's back. Otherwise, it'll be Tendai, Sean Rowan, and Lewis Monsmer at the back with Ben House out. Do you know what it could be? I mean, Ben House is, as we know, our leading scorer in the league. Just to underline that, not overall. But that'll probably mean, and we're going to preview Wrexham, but it'll probably mean Bailey Cadamarteri gets to start on Tuesday night. We got 4 yellow cards from 21 fouls. They got 1 from 13. So proportionately, it doesn't really balance out. But I can't complain about the ref. And there were a few around me doing it, but it's easy. It's an easy go-to. It really is. And shots on target. We were so close. It was they had 7, we had 6. Everything about the game was level, apart from the fact that it was 3-2. I can put an argument together for it being 1-1 being the fair result. Because XG ours was 1.26. So that means we did enough to definitely score 1 goal, but not enough to score 2. And theirs was 2.72. But if you take the penalty away, which they missed anyway, their actual XG from open play was 1.96. So it's enough to score 1, but not enough to score 2. So I think morally, we drew 1-1 yesterday, and we'll take that.
Yeah, that's going to go down great.
Okay, right. What we're going to do, we'll wrap up from Wycombe now. Just quickly, I know Tendai got man of the match. If you had to pick somebody that wasn't Tendai the Requa for man of the match yesterday, who would you be picking?
Ethan.
yeah, Ethan Rahan, just different class.
Yeah.
And whoever we have injured, I remember. Just going back, I remember one of the cup games where he came on or he didn't play. It's Chesterfield, I think, that Chris and I went to watch, and he was missing. And it's like, if we don't have him, we're buggered. Everything, or it might have been Harrogate actually. Everybody else, you can kind of replace. I genuinely think that you can. If we do go into Tuesday's game with Tendai and Lewis Monsmer and Sean Rowan as the back three, I wouldn't be overly, not when I say overly worried. I mean, it's an issue not having your regular back three, but you'd still think, well, that's decent enough. But for me, even though Conor McGrandles had a good game again yesterday, I just think when Ethan Rahan's out, he's the one that we miss. So we will go to an ad break if you are listening at home. You know, at the time. And if you are watching live on YouTube, we won't go to an ad break. We'll just carry straight on. We'll carry straight on in a minute. You know, I am bloody starving. I've only had 2 rounds of toast and a slice of pork pie today.
I am also very hungry, and I'm no longer having my Sunday dinner, which I was supposed to be doing.
No. Was it a girl cooking your Sunday dinner? You said it was
my
a
friend's. It was my friend's wife, so yes.
Okay, that's dodgy ground, that, Charlie. You don't want to be messing around with another man's wife.
It's fine. He knows. As in, he was also going to be there.
I was going to say, he knows. It's fine. It's fine. Right, we'll come back in. We're going to go straight into the Morecambe draw. So we'll come back in 3. At the time again, 36:30. 3, 2, 1. And we're back. Thank you for listening to our sponsorship advert type thing. So we'll move on now from the Wycombe defeat. And before we go to what could be a Wrexham defeat, says Mr. Positivity, let's talk about the next round of the Bristol Street Motors. Oh, no, it's not anymore. The Virtua Trophy. And I saw some great puns on the renamed Virtua Trophy. There was, I think it was Marcus Clayson said the Virtual Signalling Trophy, the Virtue Signalling Trophy, because people don't go to it on boycott it. Kate Jackson, I think, said the Virtually Nobody Cares Trophy, which I thought was quite a nice one as well. There was a lot for me. Do you know what annoys me a little bit? Is this whole seeding thing. So you can't draw any. We couldn't draw Aston Villa under 21s anyway because they don't play at home. It's just like, oh my God, there's more permutations than Champions League. But we couldn't really have got a better draw, probably. I don't know what you think.
Do you know, it's weird because we were sat here 2 weeks ago after the Man City game talking about how great we played, about how positive it was, and actually about the positives around this trophy. But the fact with our squad depth that we've got this season, the fact it gives us a great opportunity to give different players opportunities. And honestly, totally missed that we drew Morecambe. Really don't care at this stage. Like, obviously, I'd love to see us get a Wembley trip out of this, of course, but it's like that round of 16 and the quarterfinal point, or I don't even know, is it around the 32 first and then the round of 16? At that point, I'm like, yeah, let's just get these games out of the way. Those are the Tuesday night annoyance games because you kind of have to put out a bit more of a team to win the game than maybe you did have to do in the group stages. And, you're still buying for Wembley, but you're also so far off it. And yeah, at that point, I really could not care less about this game. But, we are a Lincoln City podcast. So, yeah, positive. Morecambe, good draw. Hopefully we can beat them.
Oh, you miserable sod.
Yeah.
Interesting fact, it's the 3rd season in a row where we've drawn Morecambe in a cup competition.
Trophy, FA, and then trophy again, was it?
Yeah, it was indeed. So it was FA, the Football League trophy. We drew 1-1 with them and won 4-3 on penalties. Cole Stockton scored and Tom Hopper. And then obviously last season we lost 2-1. JJ McKiernan played for them. It'll be interesting for JJ this time. I think it'll be a game he'll get quite a warm welcome. And before that, we have played them twice in the Cup. Both the times before they were a Football League team, we beat them 1-0 in the FA Cup in 1977. And we beat them 3-2 in November 2000. I want to say that it was Grant Brown broke through the record appearances. But Lee Thorpe scored a hat-trick. It was when the Football League trophy had non-league teams in it. So rather than having the EFL trophy and under-21 teams and a non-league trophy and under-21 teams, just the under-21 teams off and played each other. It was great until we lost, I think, to Halifax in the Football League trophy once when Kevin Sandwith scored and we signed him not long afterwards. I still think being in this trophy is a good thing. I think having this draw is a good thing. It'll be an opportunity for Rob Street, who did really well against Man City, to come in and try and stake a claim for a place. It'll be a good opportunity for JJ McKiernan to do that. You would expect potentially Tyler Walker to be back by that point and maybe get some minutes. For me, it's just a really good opportunity to get some minutes in some players. Hopefully MJ Kamara's foot is healed by then. We can bring him in, or Sheen Gallagher, who is actually, somebody was telling me yesterday, and I can't remember who it was, who was impressed them in his 2 appearances. And the reason I think it's a good draw is because it's a winnable draw. No disrespect to Morecambe, but obviously they're not having a great season. They're 23rd in League 2, level with Swindon, I think, Mark Kennedy's former employer. So it's a real good opportunity for us to progress and then have another 90 minutes where potentially a returning Tom Bayliss might get some minutes, or do you know what I mean? So for me, it's just in the absence of a good, solid, robust reserve league, which we used to have many years ago, I think this is a really good opportunity to get minutes into players. And of course, if you win, to get 10 grand, 15 grand, 20 grand, whatever you pick up. And money is always a nice little sweetener as well.
Yeah, of course. And they are, they're not good at Morecambe. Some of the passages of play that they've had so far this season have been genuinely woeful, and you watch it and you feel bad for Morecambe fans who have to watch that week in, week out. But there'll be a good few Lincoln fans that go up there, I'm sure. I'm sure we'll break over the 3-digit number in terms of away following on a Tuesday night, which is always good for that far away. I think if I remember correctly, Morecambe, when we had them in the Football League trophy 2 years ago, I think they brought something like 29 fans on the Tuesday, which obviously applauding to the 29 that did come along that day. But obviously we would hope to be taking a few more than that. I think if I remember correctly, that was because didn't we play them in the league something like the weekend before or the weekend after or something like that? It was very, very quick turnaround. But yeah, for whatever reason, but hopefully we can go up, take a few up there, have a decent enough game. Hopefully one or two other players can shine just like they did against Man City's under-21s. And of course, it's a different ball game because it's actually an EFL team, which also probably means that if a player does perform well in those sorts of games, in a game against a Morecambe, it's going to be looked on in a lot more favourable light than what it was maybe against the Man City under-21s by sort of certain sections of supporters, which I fully understand and agree with.
Yeah, well remembered. It was, we beat them 2-1 on the 19th of November, which obviously is my birthday. And then 3 days later, they came here and we drew 1-1. And then actually we played them again on the 29th of April, which was my stag weekend. Yeah.
And I also believe, if I remember correctly, that week, neither of us had the game the following Saturday. So we had tried to make it so that it was back-to-back Saturdays, but we didn't agree and we made them travel on the Tuesday night.
Yeah, sounds about right. Sounds about right. Taff and Oakley Booth played in that Football League trophy game, and
who?
That was yeah, exactly. Yeah, Oakley Booth. My God,
is he still in Portugal?
I wouldn't have a clue, mate. To be honest, yeah, he's at a team called Estrella, actually, which is one of my favourite lagers. There we go. Right. Shall we pick up on one other little bit of news from the week, which I don't think we have covered on the podcast, and that is David Bridges leaving the club. Now, I don't think that was covered on last week's podcast because I think it happened in the week. Another one great for puns, wasn't it? No burning your bridges. Hopefully we can build bridges in the blah, blah, blah. Probably... we said live on the podcast he was still at the club a couple of weeks ago. That was confirmed at the time. As I understand it, he's probably felt been pushed to one side a little bit. I don't know anything official, but as my understanding is that the role that he was kind of moved across to probably wasn't one that he saw as having a long-term benefit to him. I don't know exactly how it's happened. It seems to have been amicable. I think there's a story there, and I think it's a story that we probably won't get.
Yeah, well, that happens. It's the same as, okay, football in its own way is a totally different beast than any other kind of employment, but somebody, a bit of a reshuffle in a company, somebody ends up moving on from their job by mutual consent or whatever the exact wording is. It happens. There could have been 101 different personal reasons, professional reasons of why it's happened. To be honest, fair enough. I kind of want to respect the privacy on that. If they're not come out and nothing official's been said, then nothing official's been said, and it needs to stay at that. I do just want to touch on with that, though. There was a few comments and such that I saw on social media, which I think kind of sparked a bit of a debate regarding one or two people sort of saying, "Oh, it doesn't really seem like people seem to stay here for too long." And some of that's true. I think we've got a core group who maybe are here for quite a while and have been here for quite a while, and then there may be a few that do come in and then move on afterwards. But a lot of the people that move on from Lincoln City quite often move up rather than move down, which I think is always a real positive outlook that we can take from it as a football club. And I think that's something that the club probably want to try and build on. We have the in inverted commas, because we don't want to start barking a debate on a Sunday afternoon podcast, but we have the model for the players. Why shouldn't we have that for staff as well? So I think it's a good, positive way. And even though that might not have been the situation exactly, or at least yet in this instance, the fact that does happen for a lot of other members of staff is a good way to look at it, I think.
Very good. Yeah, I'm not going to pass any more comment. I don't know what went on. I think some people some people think somebody said it's got Jez George's fingerprints written all over it. I think that's it's Martin Green. I'm sure it's tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
But I just remember my own experiences at a previous job where I got a job, and then the original candidate that they wanted to employ, who had originally turned the job down, was then available, and they then appointed her as well. And we had this kind of dual role, and I knew that it wasn't a dual role. It was in terms of title, but not in anything else. And I ended up leaving because I knew it wasn't what it was said. So, in terms of employment, that's what a football club is. It's an employer and it's a business, and everybody that works there is an employee. So in that respect, I think we can see these sorts of things happen. I don't know anything that's gone on. When I went to training, David Bridges seemed an integral part of the team. It was all very amicable. So it is what it is. Wish him all of the best. But I do think in Chris Cohen, we've got a really good member of staff. So let's move on this weekend. I mean, it doesn't get any easier, does it? We've just played top of the table. I think Wrexham are now second. So we've played top of the table, going away to second. We're going away to a team who've conceded 5 at home all season, 4 in the league all season, 2 of those on the opening day of the season, against the team that have just put 3 past us yesterday. So, there we go. Doesn't get any tougher. They haven't lost at home since the end of last season. I think it was Tranmere beat them last, but I might be wrong. I haven't researched that far, to be fair. So we have now, Ben has spoken to Richard from the RobRyanRed podcast. In fact, you know what? I better just double check that, hadn't I? I'm sure it was RobRyanRed, but it might be Ryan RobRed. I don't want to get the Robs and the Ryans the wrong way round, do I? RobRyanRed. So I might have been right the first time. I can't remember. I have literally lost the will to go on. RobRyanRed Rich is speaking to Ben, and we have got a little clip of this. Now, if you want to watch this in its entirety, it will drop on the YouTube channel tomorrow. But here's 3 minutes and 29 seconds of RobRyanRed from Rich, which gives me the chance to go to the toilet.
So when you say that, you're setting up and you've got that resilience at home, how is it that you're setting up at the moment? From what I can see, it looks like it's kind of a 5-3-2, 3-5-2 setup. Does that change game to game, or is it kind of, nope, that's the way we play and away we go?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest criticism of Phil Parkinson, believe it or not, that he has many, is that he's so stubborn and rigid in his 3-5-2. He will always say, look, there's an overemphasis on formation. I do think in football, us being sort of fans and the way you sort of play video games, you play Football Manager, we all focus on the formation, but it's 11 players with 10 outfield players with very different roles that change as the game goes in. In possession, 3-5-2, out of possession, sort of 4-3-3. It can change on the fly like that. But tactically, traditionally, it's a 3-5-2. You'll have Burton in goal because Okonkwo's out injured. He broke his wrist. Callum Burton, former Plymouth goalkeeper, he loved beating Exeter at the weekend, by the way. He's a very solid backup keeper. In defence, that changes sometimes, just personnel, but it's free. You'll have Max Cleworth on the right. Centrally, you'll either have Owen O'Connell or Dan Scarr, and on the left, you have Lewis Brunt. probably, or Tom O'Connor. Wing backs, they are the two sort of certainties. James McLean on the left, Ryan Barnett on the right. And Ryan Barnett is a player who's been looked at from Rangers have been looking at him, Blackburn, Stoke, they've Preston as well. He's just signed a new contract this week. He is a real top talent, proper old school winger for a wing back. Midfield, you know what you're getting there as well. Andy Cannon was suspended against Exeter. Ollie Rathbone came in. He was man of the match. Best performance in the Wrexham shirt so far. He was our record signing for a while in the summer before Mo Farl came in up front. So midfield will be George Dobson, formerly of Charlton. It will be Elliot Lee, and it will be Rathbone or Cannon. I'd expect Rathbone because he just got man of the match. It could be Andy Cannon. Up top, it's Ollie Palmer and someone else. Ollie Palmer's a very no-nonsense number 9, scores 5 or 6 goals a season, facilitates, the rest of the team. Usually he works alongside Mullen. Mullen's not been in the best form, so it'll either be John Doddy Badvardsson, who used to play for Bolton, or it'll be Mo Farl, who's not really got chances, but we signed in the summer. So it's a 3-5-2, and that's exactly how we'll play. We are very happy for you to have the ball. I'm not sure if it's the same now, but certainly until 2 weeks ago, we averaged the lowest possession of any team in League One. We let you have the ball. We're very happy for you to do that. And that's where we kind of are at our best. This season, I really do think we might finish with the best defensive record in the league because we've really shored up how we work off the ball. We've improved the quality of defenders. Most games I expect to be 1 goal either way. It depends if we've got that quality in the final third. But yeah, I expect Lincoln to have as much of the ball as they want. They'll have to try and break us down. And certainly when we were in League 2 and non-league, we were the fastest team for transitions, getting the ball from back to front. That's what we prioritise. And Parky, although he gets criticism for being stubborn and maybe a bit tactically naive at times, it's just the most effective way to play football. And it's worked for us so far that he's never going to change that. So yeah, expect yourselves to have lots of the ball, maybe not lots of goals though, because we are so well drilled out of possession. We just know exactly what we want to do, and we hit teams really hard on the counter-attack.
Brilliant. Thank you to Rich from RobRyanRed for that. Really good interview. Some interesting stuff there to pick up on. First of all, I will just mention Ollie Palmer has scored 3 goals for Wrexham this season, and every single one of those goals has come in a 3-0 home win. He's almost nailed on to score against us, so let's hope it's not in a 3-0 home win. Some interesting conversation there around possession stats, because I think probably we've actually, depending on which site you use, we've probably had the lowest possession of any team. We certainly have at the moment 40.9% possession, Shrewsbury 41.5, Northampton 43.2, and then Wrexham on 43.6. So this is a game, Charlie, where neither team's really going to want the ball.
No, but it also means that it's a game where we've kind of got to take any chances that we get as soon as we get them as well, because I can't see us being the team that then decides to step up and having the 60% possession. If both teams want 40, it ain't going to happen. Somebody's either going to have more or they're going to have to meet in the middle. I don't know. I can't see us being the team, especially away from home, that does step up and have that more possession, which also obviously puts them in the driving seat, which potentially could be a downside for them. And I guess that's kind of what we're going to have to be hoping. We're going to have to stop them from being able to play their game and being able to then try and play our game by doing that. If we are trying to both play very similar styles in that sense. But they've got class players up and down the pitch, unfortunately, which is rather frustrating. I mean, class in terms of quality, not necessarily class in terms of personalities up and down the pitch, of course. But, mentioned there, Ryan Barnett. I was, just looking through stats and such before we did this podcast, just so I, at least knew somewhat what I was talking about. And me and Chris also spoke about Wrexham last week on our brand new EFL Hub podcast, which you should check out as well. And Ryan Barnett is basically at the top of most attacking metrics for Wrexham. And as a wing back, that's kind of exactly what you're wanting from a player in that position to be. So he's obviously going to be a danger. Now that brings us on to who's going to oppose him. If he's going to be playing right wing back, and we're going to have, let's say, a left wing back who's maybe going to be tasked with doing a little bit of defensive work against him, for me, that immediately rules out Dylan Duffy starting. Because although I do like Dylan Duffy, he's not a defender. I think he showed that at the weekend, first of all. But there's many games where, although he's impressed going forward, he's kind of showed his unfortunate inability at times to be able to do a full 90-minute defensive performance. So that potentially brings us into the realms of playing a slightly different either player there, or we try and shift around the roles slightly as well, which again, obviously, will have to be a decision that has to be made over the next 2 days. But I don't think that we're out of this from exactly what we were just talking about. The fact that they are the sort of... No, obviously, but the fact that they are the sort of team that are going to want us to have the ball, the fact that we're the sort of team that, quite frankly, won't want to necessarily have the ball, but also when we do, and if we can keep the ball on the floor and create a couple of good opportunities, you've got the likes of Ethan Arahan who can play those balls through the third with the ball at his feet. So either way, I think we're going to have chances in the game. It's then just going to be about taking them. And then it brings us on to the conversation around clinical strikers, which obviously people were bashing on our strikers over the last couple of weeks for their lack of clinicality in attack. But then obviously it depends on who we've got up top on Tuesday.
Clinicality.
It's a word. We've been through this before, Gaz.
I think you might have made that up. We haven't been through that.
Yes, we have. It's the only reason I mentioned it. We've been through it before.
Expressing no emotion. Extremely objective technical tool. Yeah, okay. Clinicality doesn't mean in terms of finishing. A couple of things. First of all, we talk about clinicality. Some reason against Exeter, they won 3-0. They had 3 shots on target, so they were being incredibly clinical there. Points to be positive. First of all, we know they're rigid in what they do. We know they play a 5-3-2 or a 3-5-2, however you want to kind of frame that. So we know what we're going to expect. So if we want to go there with a game plan to beat them, we know exactly what we're planning for, and I think actually that can be a strength for us, because I think we can be quite flexible. We may be forced into doing something different, and sometimes when we do something a little bit different, I mean, okay, Man City Kids was a bit is a unique situation, but we did something very different, and actually it worked in our favour. So I think that could almost certainly work in our favour. They've conceded the fewest goals this season with 11. We've already been through the ones that they've conceded at home, so they are incredibly tight up top. But actually, in terms of their XG and expected points, it's a really interesting story. So expected points is that you take 2 teams' XG in a game, and that gives you the expected points. So if Wrexham beat Exeter, so for instance, us and Stevenage was 0-0 back in March last year, but we had 1.24 XG, they had 0.41. So the expected points for us in that game was 3, even though we got 1. And so the expected points table is the points that you should have got based on the chances that you created. We've been there before. I'm sure I haven't lost any listeners at this point. Expected points, Wrexham are currently 17th in the division. So in terms of XG that they're creating and going up against people, they should have lost a lot more games, or they should have collected far fewer points than they have. I think they've got, off the top of my head, I haven't got the league table in front of me, if they got 30 points, and I think they should have, in theory, they're at 31. Yeah, I'm right, of course, and they should actually have had 18 points. I think there's a positive there. It shows they are taking the chances. It shows they are clinical, but at the same time, I firmly believe you can't outperform your XG over a huge long period. Eventually it will come to catch you up. If you are creating chances game after game after game, you will eventually start scoring those chances. If you are not creating chances game after game after game, but are scoring goals regularly, it's the Mark Kennedy thing from a couple of years ago. Eventually those chances, you're going to stop scoring them. You're going to stop getting the screamers. You're going to stop getting the headers that creep past an unsighted goalkeeper. So I think there's some positivity to come out of that. I think it's going to be an incredibly tough game, and I think if we come out of it with a point, that'd be a decent result. But then if you've only taken 3 points from a possible 12 in terms of form, that's quite damaging. So it is a huge issue. But we do talk about their home record. Let's talk about our away record. We've only lost 1 away from home this season, which was Crawley. Now, okay, that was the only game where we had more possession than our opponent, which again is a negative omen. So, there is something occurred to me at the weekend, and I think it's really a pertinent point. You can build up these games, so you can talk about them as much as you want. You can talk about records, you can talk about teams being clinical, dominating possession, getting results, not losing at home, all of that sort of stuff. But when the game kicks off, none of that matters. And that was what I was really fearful of Wycombe. And 15 minutes, okay, we lost 3-2, but 15 minutes in, I was like, actually, no, we can take something from this and we can match them. And we did, and we lost 3-2. And that's how it turned out. But it was a good game of football. So there's no reason why we can't go to this game with a similar sort of approach. I don't think anything is a foregone conclusion. And I just think it'll be a close game. And I think one goal wins it either way.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I think Tuesday is going to be about us more than it is about Wrexham, putting it quite frankly, because we don't, we're talking about potential team selection that could throw up one or two, not even surprises, because obviously we're already starting to predict what Tuesday night's team might look like, but it's going to throw up a few differences anyway to what maybe our strongest 11 would be. And then it's about how we can adapt with that. And Skubala, if he does know the system that Wrexham are going to be playing, which it was mentioned in the preview there, they do play a very samey system week in, week out. Okay, there are some differences depending on who they're playing, but it's probably a little bit easier to predict. And honestly, if we're looking at from a tactical point of view, I wouldn't want anybody else other than Michael Skubala kind of being able to use that to then change how we set ourselves up going into Tuesday night. So no matter how Wrexham play, no matter who they've got in what position, or no matter whether they want the ball or whether they don't, no matter how many chances they get, Tuesday night's going to be about us. We're going to go there with the opportunity to be able to take something from them, the potential to maybe in a way even stun Wrexham, which is kind of weird to say, even though they are, considering they are simply a promoted side this year. But we've got the opportunity to be able to go ahead and get something there. It's then just about us making sure that we focus on ourselves and can do something with that and do something with the information that the team and the players will have.
Brilliant. Right, so that's Wrexham. We've covered Wrexham, we've covered Morecambe, we've covered David Bridges, and we have covered Wycombe Wanderers. I forgot who we played there. It's been a long show. Finally, this is the first opportunity I've had to mention the marathon thing outside of the video that the club did. So as regular listeners will know, I have been fortunately selected. I say fortunately. I've been selected to run the London Marathon for the Lincoln City Foundation. So I've had loads of great messages and offers of help and all sorts of stuff like that, which is fantastic. I've actually got now my own dedicated marathon coach who was offered his services for free, which is Paul Degare, who is on the Former Players Association. So he's going to be taking the lead on my training, which has slowed over this weekend due to me having a little bit of a cold and it being wet and it not having to start just yet anyway. So I haven't been sharing the link or anything about at the moment, but I will be doing. But I can announce on here, and I'll do an article about it much later on, but I am writing a book about running, which I'm sure sounds incredibly boring. But there are a number of books out there about preparing for a marathon and running and all that sort of stuff. I still don't consider myself a runner, even though in the interview I went as a runner. I'm looking for my next challenge, but I was under pressure. It's hard when the camera's on you. So I don't consider myself a runner. I suppose I have to really, because I do go out. But it's been an odd transition. So the idea behind the book, which tentatively is called I Don't Like Running, but I Ran a Marathon, is just to give some practical tips and advice based on my journey for people who would like to get into running. Some of the stuff that you never really get told. One of the things, just a little insight, one of the things you never get told, and boys, men, you'll probably identify with this if you're a runner. If you go on a long run on a cold day, and then you come in and you try to go to the toilet, what you find is that one part of your body has suddenly disappeared and all you have is a flap of skin. Now, nobody told me that was something that 90% of runners suffer from. And it was a real panic. And it's basically, it's not genital talk, to be fair, in the book, but it's all sorts of other stuff. It's things about trainers, it's things about gear, it's things about the difference between running on a treadmill and running on the road. It's who's giving you tips, the advice, any advice that I kind of have from my period of running. And then the second part of the book is genuinely just a running training diary. So for people who do want to run a marathon, I'll be putting my training down on a week by week basis, the different runs that I've done, how I found that, kind of a bit of a training diary. Especially now I've got Paul Degare as well. It means I'm not just going to be copying it out of Chris Evans's book and putting it in my own book. So that will be going on pre-order, and every penny of profit from that book will be going towards my total. It will be added on to my fundraising total for the foundation. So that's the first time that I have announced that, and I'll be doing a proper announcement in due course.
Oh, good. Is it going to be an audio book version?
No, I'll just put it in really big letters if you want for you. I'll print it on A4.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll send you a manuscript. So yeah,
it's funny. Obviously, you announce with a proper sort of new player style announcement, but that the club did, by the way, which I thought was outstanding.
Brilliant.
The little interviews and the tweets and that, and it was so good. But obviously, loads of people messaging and putting on social media and such saying congratulations. So, what the hell's with the congratulations? He's got to put himself through that. What's the congratulation? It's more good luck than anything else. But no, seriously, that's obviously it's a great honor. I'm very much aware of how much how much pride you've kind of taken in having the opportunity to be able to do this for the foundation as well, which is really good. But also, like I say, it's the next step of your running journey. I did think about doing it as well. I asked Ben if he'd run with me. He said he was going to pull up after half a kilometre. So I decided not to bother this year. Yeah, so I decided not to bother. Sorry, Ben.
Half a kilometre. Keep his headphones in and listen to music all the way around. So the other bit of advice, I was obviously at the foundation, and the other bit of advice, we were in a canteen, and I forget the guy's name. I said, "If you've run a marathon, yeah, what advice have you got?" And he went, I think the best advice I can give you is at 22 miles, never trust a fart. Because apparently if you're on the gels, because you have the energy gels and stuff like that, it can get a little bit messy. So, but Chris has suggested that I have jelly babies. They're really good for that instant kick. So I'm going to buy a big box of jelly babies. I might not eat them while I'm running, but I bloody love jelly babies. Anyway, that was episode 335 of the Stacey West podcast. We were looking back at a defeat against Wycombe, a tough defeat to take, if I'm honest. They were the better side, but it was a really good game of football, and there's nothing worse than coming out on the wrong side of the result in a really good game of football, because you want to remember it fondly, and you probably can't, because a defeat is defeat. 3-2 or 5-0, you get no points for it. Simple as that. We're looking ahead to Wrexham. I have steered away from the Hollywood stuff because at the end of the day, who their owners are, it's of no bother to me. There's been plenty of documentaries about teams. Wrexham are just a team on the up. It's going to be a tough game, but it's going to be one that we look forward to. These are the games that we've got to relish. But it is just a little bit of a throwback, isn't it? We say these are the games we're going to relish because it's much better than when we were in the National League playing the likes of Salisbury, Bath City, and Wrexham every week. So it might be a little bit like a throwback to the National League. So there we go. Thank you very much, everybody who has tuned in and watched. We've had about 30 watching, which is really good for 4:00 on a Sunday afternoon. If you are watching later on YouTube, please like, subscribe, etc., etc., etc. If you're listening at home, thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. All that remains to be said is up the imps.
Up the imps.
Yeah.